What's up, guys? It's Adam here from Chants&Daggers. Welcome back. Today I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of go over last weekend's Road to Nationals results. It's Turtle Burst Viserai, as we've lovingly called it. But yeah, I had a pretty good degree of success. I top aided first RTN last Saturday at Dice Dojo here in Chicago. And on Sunday, I made it into the finals and got my Nationals invite on Viserai. And so I was pretty excited. It seemed like the deck could perform in the meta, but we found a way to make it happen. So today I kind of wanted to share my experiences over the weekend. The whole game plan kind of centers on playing Arknight Ascendancy. So if you don't know what the card does, which is kind of funny, it's a Viserai specialization. Arknight Ascendancy costs 1 less to play for each rune chant you control. If it hits, create X rune chant tokens, where X is the damage dealt by Arknight Ascendancy, and it has Dominate. So it usually costs 6, but we're never going to pay the 6 cost because the goal is to get 6 rune chants and make this card free. So we're trying to squeak out as much value as possible with the on-hit of Arknight Ascendancy. So because of the Dominate, it makes it easy to buff this card and then kind of guarantee you're going to get some damage through. So you may see some other OTK style Viserai decks where you kind of want to be just hoarding rune chants the entire game and then play a Ninth Blade, because this, similarly, it's a big power attack. It comes in for 9, and it has the rune chant reduction, which means for each rune chant you control, it costs 1 less to play. Usually it costs 9. Usually it costs 9. The OTK style decks, their game plan kind of centers around playing this card because it's more damage. It's 9 damage off of 1 card if you have the 9 rune chants stacked up, which is pretty good value. A 1 card 9 plus, however many rune chants you have. But with this kind of like OTK style or using the Ninth Blade, usually whenever you play this attack, you're just throwing all your rune chants and then you're left with like nothing on your next turn. So really we're trying to get value by chaining. In my version of the deck, I'm trying to get value by chaining Arknight Ascendancy together, hitting once, and then on the following turn you'll have rune chants to basically play this card again if you want to. So this kind of gives it a mid-range game plan where you want to block some and you want to attack some. It's not as aggressive as your traditional like non-attack attack with go again into swing sword type of game plan, but it can be really aggressive when it needs to be. And the reason why this is important is because like some matchups, if you try to go for an OTK game plan where you just defend everything, your opponent's going to chip away at you through the course of the game, and you're just not going to be able to basically survive long enough to get enough rune chance to kill them in 1 turn. So you need to be able to flex. And there are some matchups with Viserai where you just have to go for an OTK game plan because they have too much armor, too many D-reacts, that sort of thing. But you actually can shift into an OTK game plan with this deck. So yeah, it has a lot of different ways to win, but it doesn't have many matchups that are just an auto loss. Okay, so that's the good thing about it. I don't really just want to go through and talk about every single card one by one because I've done that in the past and recently as well on Hank's channel, Goblin Reserve. We recently kind of went over the list using a web browser and Fabrary, talked about a lot of the cards. So at this point, I think it's a little bit redundant, but if you guys want, kind of the deep dive on each and every single card, maybe check that video out. But I will go through some of the game plans here. Let's kind of start by talking about the first event that was Dice Dojo. For this event, we had about 30 people, so it was close to being 6 rounds of Swiss, but we kind of snuck in under that number and only had 5 rounds of Swiss and then cut to top 8. Players that started 3-0 kind of had a lock for the top 8, if I'm not mistaken. So my first match was against KO, and this matchup with KO can kind of go either way. If they just get their consistent aggression, sometimes it's hard to outvalue that, even with our defensive options. And I was trying to, I'll pull out one card that I was trying, a few sideboard cards that I was trying into that matchup that ended up not being that important. So my thoughts were play Runic Reclamation. It's 3 for 7, but when it hits, you can destroy a token or they control. And then you get to make a rune chant. So my thought was, let's play this in the list, and then we can destroy some of their agility tokens, which drastically powers down their next turn. As it turned out, when I was playing the Runic Reclamation, it kind of just ended up being like more cards in the deck that I didn't want to see. What I really wanted to see was the rune chant generators, and then the buffs, and then Arcanite Ascendancy. And so through the course of the day, and starting with that first match, I realized, you know what? I want to see my Sonata Galaxia, read the runes, incantations, blessings. The key card for the matchup is probably Slogism, which you want to arsenal as soon as you see it. And then from there, you're looking to play a Slogism into Arcanite Ascendancy, which makes Arcanite Ascendancy come in for 11 with its Dominate. So anyway, the first match, I was playing against KO, and I get the rune chance pretty quickly, find my Slogism, I find Arcanite Ascendancy, and I send it over to him. And I think probably he didn't have too much experience with the matchup because he was taking a look at it, and he blocked with maybe one card. He tried to save his armor for a later attack, but I don't think he realized how much value that you get when you deal physical damage with Arcanite Ascendancy. So at the end of the turn, Arcanite Ascendancy hit for 8, and I ended up making 8 rune chants and starting the next turn with plenty of rune chants to kind of roll into further attacks. I think actually that was just the pivotal moment in that matchup, is rolling that value right there, because my opponent couldn't really outvalue me from that point forward when I came in with further attacks. So I ended up winning that one. The final life totals were 7-0, so you got to take a little bit of damage to throw back your big attacks, but I was totally okay doing that. So round 1, KO win, felt pretty good. KO can be like an iffy matchup, like I said. I consider it to be about 50-50. Yeah, you're just hoping to see your key cards sooner than your opponents. My round 2 was also against a KO, and it turned out that I just was able to kind of roll the Arcanite Ascendancies, and also he did play one Blood Rush Bellows turn, and he drew into Terror Limb from Limb and another Blood Rush Bellows, and it kind of capped him out on the power level at that turn. And I think that's one of the key turns where KO gets the advantage on you. So I would say he had some bad draws, and he wasn't able to threaten as much damage, which kind of just gave me the value edge in the matchup, and I ended up winning that match as well. So two KOs up, 2 KOs down. I was feeling pretty good. Third match was against another local guy who's been on Great Axe Dory for a really long time. Great Axe Dory is one of those decks where they're trying to fatigue you, and so you have to commit to your game plan immediately when you see the Great Axe, which is you need to try to OTK this opponent. So you need to stack as many rune chants as possible, block wherever you can, and then send a big attack with over 40 rune chants at the end of the game. So that match went on for a long time. And I was getting the value turns where you have the Mordred Tide into Sonata Galaxia. Maybe you go find a Runeblood Barrier and you make like 5 rune chants and then follow up with another non-attack. Meanwhile, you're triggering Viserai to make rune chants. So, yeah, I guess I could talk about that a little bit more. But whenever you're playing for the OTK plan, which those matchups are going to be like Great Axe Dory, Victor, things like Arachne can be OTK, Teklovasin can be an OTK game plan. But whenever you're playing those matchups, the damage that your opponent is doing is, sure, it's important, but if you have a chance to make a lot of rune chants in one turn, you want to eat the damage. You just want to take whatever they're sending at you. And the best way to kind of accelerate your rune chant generation, I would say, is have turns where you're playing multiple non-attack actions, Runeblade attack, or I'm sorry, Runeblade non-attack actions, so you can trigger Viz multiple times, especially in conjunction with Mordred Tide. I think Mordred Tide becomes like pretty important in the when you're fighting the fatigue. So, anyways, in this game, I got up to believe it was 43 or 44 rune chants. My health total was down to about 6. I basically, I drew into an Arcanite Ascendancy, a Slogism, had one more 3 pump. So I was starting to get worried because if a Great Axe Dory plays a Spillblood towards the end of the game, she can just dominate you and then basically end the game from there. So with my life total being what it was, around, I believe it was 6, I decided to go ahead and send it there. So it was 43 rune chants and the 14 dominate. Seems like a lot. It was 57 damage, but he actually managed to block out using his armor and a red Steelblade Shunt in Arsenal. And additionally, he had played 2 red sigils during the course of the game, so his life total was actually at 46. So, yeah, he managed to survive the turn and get down to, I think it was 5 health. And, normally from there, you can potentially close the game with a Looming Doom, your Vexing Malice, etc. So I started the Vexing Malice threatening the 2 Arcane, and he kept coming back at me with red Findle's Fighting Spirits and gaining that 1 life. So, yeah, unfortunately, I just had trouble closing out the game, and it ended up I had a Looming Doom with like 3 counters on it, but he actually decked me out. So some thoughts about that matchup is like I really should have been running Reaping Blade. That way he couldn't get any value off of the sigils. But yeah, it's kind of hard to know when you're going into a match with Dory. Are they going to be on Dawnblade or Great Axe? I know I kind of knew this opponent because he's been working on this deck for a really long time. Shout out to him because he's also committed to the hero, committed to the deck, and it was one that he had worked on a lot. So yeah, I should probably have known that he was going to be presenting Great Axe and go with Reaping Blade, because as I said on my OTK turn, I threw all the damage I could, and it took him down to 6. If he had not played those 2 sigils, that's like exact lethal. So that was kind of a mental note for that one. But that was my 3rd round. I'm 2-1 at that point, still feeling pretty good. Next round, I go into a match with Vynnset, my buddy, Mr. Bodingles, also a YouTuber. You should check out his channel if you get a chance. But he's a real buddy of mine. We talk a lot of deck theory. So it was a shame to have to play him, but we just had like a really solid Runeblade showdown. And I think I realized kind of there was one turning point in the game, and it was a turn where I was able to... I had to take a lot of damage, but then I had a turn where I could make a ton of rune chants and then also set a Runeblood Barrier at the same time. So I think it was like a Mordred Tide into become the Arc Knight, discarding a card, into a Sonata Galaxia, and then I retrieved the Runeblood Barrier at that time, which, like, with the Mordred Tide, that makes 5 rune chance, and then I played that into a Read the Runes at the end of the turn. So we did the calculation, and it was about 15, I think it was close to 15 rune chance that I made that turn, and then I still had the Runeblood Barrier out. So my opponent's then staring down a wall of 15 rune chance, and it basically really lets you turn the tide towards the end of the game with Vynnset, because Vynnset can really just like keep throwing value attacks at you and chain together a couple, and you had the rune chance as well. So I think having a massive Runeblood Barrier up with 15 chance meant that I could block with a couple cards, basically soak some of the damage with the Runeblood Barrier, and then still save a card or two to come back with a big attack with the remaining rune chance. And that's exactly what happened in this game. And so it kind of allowed me to gain the tempo and end up finishing out the game, because I'm also throwing rune chance, which are kind of hard to soak for the opponent depending on what he draws into. So massive respect to my buddy on Vynnset there, but I managed to get that game. So I'm 3-1 at that point, still feeling pretty good. And then I went into the 5th match, which was against Reinar. Aaron, shout out to him. He's also a Viserai player, but he's been on Reinar lately. So the Reinar matchup, I played similar to the way I play against KO, but in the Reinar matchup, I realized you kind of don't want too many defense reactions. So, like, I have a couple unmovables. Usually I sideboard in one, but for Reinar, I think I realized, like, after the game. So here's a spoiler. I lost the game against Reinar. And I think the reason is that I had too many defense reactions. So I think if I play that matchup from here on out, I sideboard out the unmovables, I sideboard out the sink belows, and probably just leave the reduced to rune chance. Because he got me a couple times where he intimidated my hand and intimidated out my defense reaction, and then I was stuck with it and basically just had to come back to my turn in Arsenal a few times. But he got me with this one play, which is, I think, kind of a bread and butter brute play right now, where you attack with a claw for 3. He's holding a bunch of cards in hand. He discards an agile windup, intimidating a card from my hand, and then long story short, he ends up playing that gives the claw a go again, but then he played a savage beatdown. And since he's discarded the agile windup, he can fulfill the conditions for this. But yeah, he played the savage beatdown, discarded a massacre, so intimidated 2 more cards from my hand. And it was just a massive attack coming in. That hurts. But on the very last turn, I think he ended up closing the game out with a Show No Mercy, intimidating cards from my hand, and then dealing basically exact lethal if I blocked with a card or I didn't block with a card. So that card is, it's very good. It's very good for Reinar. So at that point I was 3-2, and I was concerned I was going to bubble out for that top 8, but managed to stick in it. Managed to sneak in 8th place, and I was to play against a Kano, who was the number 1 seed, blazing for lethal. If you've ever played against him, great Kano player from Wisconsin. But I think, like, of the top 8, which was, I think, a couple Victor, Aaron had made it in on Reinar. There was a KO, the Kano. I think that I had one of the best chances against Kano in that top 8, because I know the Kanos are looking out. They're trying to get the Guardians and prey on them. And since there were a couple of them, I was kind of to be the roadblock for him. And I don't think he was quite ready for what I was going to throw. But for the Kano matchup, you sideboard out like all your defense reactions, obviously. And you play some special tech. So I'll talk a little bit about the Kano matchup real quick here. But you're playing Scepter of Pain, and then your offhand is Arcane Lantern. You play the Dyadic Carapace, so you have AB3. And then I have one Oasis Respite, which I put in the deck kind of as Kano insurance, but also not bad against the Dominate heroes. So you play AB3, and then you play Amethyst Tiara. So this card, traditionally, like if you've tried it out against Kano with an aggressive Viserai list, the card is actually really bad because you never have enough rune chance for it really to matter. And then if you do have some rune chance, Kano can typically let the rune chance explode, and then he doesn't have to worry about Amethyst Tiara at all. And then he can just go off from there. But in this deck, you have the option to stack rune chance to give yourself a substantial barrier with the Amethyst Tiara. But the game plan basically goes like this, okay? So you want to stack up like 7 and 10 rune chance, and then you want to throw a sizable attack at Kano to try and chip their life total down. So the best thing you can do is buff an Arcanite Ascendancy with like a Come to Fight or a Runic Reckoning, because this has Dominate, and when it hits, it's going to replenish your rune chant store to kind of put up a barrier for basically give you a stack of rune chance that you can pop the Amethyst Tiara to give yourself some protection with. So yeah, I guess I should read the text for Amethyst Tiara, but as an instant, you destroy the Tiara. Rune chants you control have Spell Void 1 this turn. So it's basically like it's the same thing as having a Runeblood barrier up for the most part. So I guess if you're talking key cards against Kano, it's like Runeblood barrier, which frequently you can go pick out with a Sonata Galaxia. Because once they let the Galaxia resolve, the Runeblood barrier comes in and it's there. So any damage they do is going to get soaked by your rune chance. And then, yeah, the Tiara is like an extra onboard instant speed Runeblood barrier. So what you do is, yeah, you try and chunk their life total down to say 10, probably 10 to 12 with an initial attack, and then you stack rune chance up to their life total plus like 4 or 5, and then you send the rune chance with any attack really, and that kind of gives Kano an ultimatum of whether he tries to prevent the rune chance and the attack, which is usually just lethal, or if he wants to go off. And if they try and do the wildfire combo, basically you pop the Amethyst Tiara in response to the Aether Wildfire, and then that should save you from that. And then hopefully you can save a blue in hand or whatever to prevent some other damage if they try to play on top of that. Anyway, I know all that is like really confusing, but to give you a rundown of what happened in this matchup was Kano chose to go first, and this was a good idea in my opinion, because he basically chipped away a lot of damage, a lot of my life total early before I could do anything, before I could play any rune chance or throw an attack. So I took some damage the first turn, and then in subsequent turns, I ended up drawing into some really red heavy hands. So I had to take some damage in order to play out some rune chant generators and get it going. So anyway, by the time I had my opportunity to do my first chunk against Kano, I was already down to 20 life. So I had to send that in response. Like, he dealt me some additional damage. And basically from there, the game plan couldn't really work because I couldn't save any cards in hand, and he ended up throwing an Aether Wildfire at me. I had to use the Amethyst Tiara. Might have been an Aether Spindle, but it was a big boy coming at me for close to my life total, which had gotten down to about 6 or maybe it was 4. So I basically had to pop the Amethyst with about 6 rune chance. He's in response to me popping the Amethyst Tiara, he just did some instant speed stuff, played over top of my damage prevention, and killed me. So yeah, so I lost that match, which was pretty unfortunate. Made it to the top 8, couldn't get into the top 4. From there were some victors, and I was really hoping to see, the decks this deck is trying to target are Warrior, like Kasai, Dory, and also Guardian, like Victor. Because either they're resource light, or they give you plenty of time to set up. So unfortunately, yeah, he just played really well. He he fried me down really quickly, and that was my day. But I was pretty pleased with the result there. So that was it for the first RTN, and then on the second day, which was Sunday, another 30-person RTN at 401k in the suburbs of Chicago, and yeah, this one. Spoiler alert, this one went much better for me. The first round of this event was against a KO. Actually, my buddy from Wisconsin, who's a Viserai player at heart, was on KO, and the deck just performed like really well. I had taken the notes from the previous day about like, okay, Runic Wreck is basically, you don't want to play it because it's just extra cards that muddle your deck a little bit to prevent you from getting the cards that you want. But I felt pretty good about the match because I got the rune chant generators early, pocketed a Slogism, and then I showed my buddy what this Viserai deck could do. Actually got to play a double Slogism into an Arcanite Ascendancy. So Slogism plus 6, Slogism plus 6, that's 12, plus the Arcanite Ascendancy. So it came in for 17, and I believe it was 14 rune chants. So at that point I had chewed up a little bit of his armor already. So most of this Arcanite Ascendancy hit and ended up making a lot of rune chants. So basically the deck just performed really well and was able to present damage very quickly. So I had him on the back foot, and then KO couldn't really do his value like double attack turns or anything like that. Even there were a couple like cast bones turns that I believe didn't have an agility token associated with it, so it was basically one large attack coming in, which I don't feel too bad about kind of dealing with. In that matchup, you do want to save your armor for the disruptive attacks like Sin Packing or CNC. But yeah, round 1 beat the KO. Round 2, I went into a match with a Vynnset again, and my strategy against Vynnset is actually play towards their off turn, where you don't want to give them any value on the Deathly Whales, because when you take damage on those turns, they make rune chants, which helps them kind of chain into further turns. So I especially try to block out on those turns. So in this game, like the tempo kind of stayed with the Vynnset player for most of the game, and actually he was really chaining turns together really well. I chunked in like some pretty serious damage in the middle, and then I kind of drew into some defensive cards after that, like my defense reactions, reduce the rune chance, sink below, stuff like that. So I couldn't kind of keep the ball going, and so it was actually a really tough matchup. He had me on the back foot. It kind of went close to time, and unfortunately he had made some mistakes with banishing some cards, and I ended up banishing a card from his arsenal that had blood debt with widespread destruction, and so he started taking blood debt right at the end of the game, which was kind of unfortunate for him. Like he played really well up to that point, but yeah, managed to take the win in that matchup. So we go into the third game, and finally, for the first time all weekend, it was my favorite matchup, which is Victor. And so if you don't know the game plan for this, Victor doesn't have the dominate, doesn't quite have the aggression of Bravo. So you just take as much time as you want to make as many rune chants as you can. And then you send basically one turn that is worth close to 60 points, which hopefully they can't block out and they die. So yeah, we went into that one. We just kind of did the job. You know, he got me with a couple pummels, especially towards the end of the game when I was trying to play out a slogism. So I didn't on the final turn. I believe I sent 44 and a ninth blade for 9. He had taken a little bit of damage, but it turned out like, you know, he didn't have any defense reactions in Arsenal, and mostly the arcane is what got him. Because if you're playing against Victor, like his typical game plan, he plays the block cards, and if you're not giving him the chance to gain value from playing block cards, basically he has to keep cycling these block cards around the entire game, and you're not able to arsenal it. So towards the end of the game, Victor ends up with like a lot of red cards in hand, which are not good for pitching into the rune chants. So yeah, I got the win against Victor. I was 3-0, and basically that's locked for top 8. Which like I'm not really good about doing the math to see, you know, where if you're locked, or, you know, what games you need to win, or, you know, what standing you're going to be in. But I went into the fourth match, and it was against Bolton. And Bolton is a hero that I'm extremely familiar with. He is kind of my second hero. I know what Bolton can do. He's really explosive. And to make matters worse, I was going up against Alex. He's a really good Bolton player from Wisconsin that goes under Flame Dog on YouTube. He's part of Second Cycle. In my opinion, he's one of the best Bolton players out there, if not the best, at least in the USA. I know that's a bold claim, but he's really been with Bolton through the good times and the bad for Bolton, and so he has intimate knowledge of, you know, what you need to do against all the different heroes. So we went into the game, and it was a little bit relaxed because you know, he was like, yeah, we're both locked for the top 8. I was like, okay, that's good. I still want to win. So I was, what I ended up doing was I tried playing the Reaping Blade instead of the Scepter of Pain, because my theory was that if I could deny value on the Lumina Ascension hits, then, you know, that might be pretty big in the game. So I played the Reaping Blade. On Bolton, he was playing no AB, which I think is probably the correct choice. You just present a lot of aggression, and yeah, we went back and forth. I had, I think it was 7 or 8, 7 or 8 rune chants, and I played Galaxia to get a Looming Doom, hoping to get the value from the 2 arcane each turn, since he was running like no AB. So I went for the Looming Doom instead of like the normal Ascendancy or Big Ninth Blade plan. Because in my experience, like Bolton has a decent amount of armor, and he also plays Soul Shield. So if you're trying, the normal game plan is buff Arknight Ascendancy, get the damage through, get the value from the on hit and the rune chants. But against Bolton, I think he can block out your Ascendancies pretty well. So my theory was, hey, let's just go pick up a Looming Doom, throw that on board, maybe play a little bit defensively in the turns after that, and then try and chunk away with some Arcane. Um, the Looming Doom had 12 counters on it, but the game went 6 more turns. So I think in the end I got exactly the value of my rune chance out of the Looming Doom, which was okay, but it didn't help me win the game, unfortunately. Yeah, he just hit me with like the double Lumina. He had the Spirit of Irina in play, and the Spirit is actually a really critical card in the matchup because you do play defense reactions, but if they have like a V turn and they get like 2 Luminas out, if they sneak them in their reaction phase on the Raiden swings, then it's just kind of like too much damage to deal with. So yeah, he got me. I think he was at 5 life. Yeah, he ended the game with 5 life, and I still had 6 counters on the Looming Doom. So I think I got my value out of it, but the game plan in the end just kind of didn't really work. So I lost that when I was 3-1. Um, so I go into the next game. It's another KO. Um, Another great player. Chicago has so many great players. It's kind of insane. So I'm trying my normal game plan with KO, and I think things just kind of went a little bit too slowly for me, and my opponent had really consistent turns with agility tokens, just getting in several attacks per turn, and then eventually found his Blood Rush Bellows and those high damage turns, especially one where I had the Rune Blood Barrier up, and I just simply could not block out all the damage, so he ate almost all my rune chance, and that was a lot of my offensive power. So into the game, this one wasn't like super close. I had rune chance on board, but my opponent still had 19 life at the end of the game. Played really well, and on the weekend I was 3-1 against KO, but this was the one that I lost. So it happens. But okay, so I'm not feeling great at that point because I'm 3-2. Of course, because of the 3-0 start, I was locked for the top 8. So yeah, we took a short break. Look at the standings. It appears that I'm gonna play the Bolton Flame Dog on Bolton again in the top 8. We actually went to dinner together down the road with the other top 8 players, and we were chatting about it a little bit. And so I wasn't like super confident going into the top 8, but so anyhow, top 8 starts. We go into the round. This time I decided to play Scepter of Pain and just say, hey, let's try something different. So I played Scepter of Pain, and my goal was this time just, look for the same type of stuff. Look for Slogism, for Arcanite Ascendancy, and just kind of try and be more aggressive than he is. Hope he doesn't find the Luminas, and hope he doesn't have the defense reactions at the right time. The start of the game was pretty good for me because even though he got to go first, if you don't know, in the top 8, the higher seed gets to choose who goes first. Bolton typically wants to go first, but also playing against Viserai, you don't want to let Viserai go first to set up rune chance. But he attacks, charges a card. I block with an attack action and the Spellbound Creepers, and then or maybe it's just the attack action. But afterwards, because I blocked with an attack action, I activated the Spellbound Creepers and played a Blessing of the Occult. So the creepers die, but at the beginning of my first game turn, the blessing pops and I have 3 rune chance. So we're already kind of ahead in that regard. We have the rune chance that we need. Now we just need to find the pump and the Arcanite Ascendancy. And I think I made a few rune chance on my first turn, and then I draw up my hand and it's a buff into an Arcanite Ascendancy. And I'm like, okay, sick, He does a couple things. It's not like super threatening that turn. So I send the Arcanite Ascendancy, takes all the arcane, takes a little bit of physical, I believe. And then I had Rune Chance set up. He comes back with a couple cards, had to block with 1. It's not like incredibly threatening because in my hand, what do we got? We've got another buff and Arcanite Ascendancy. Yeah, I believe this one was a Slogism, so he had already used some armor. I'm coming in for major damage. We get the hit, we make the rune chants, and apologies to Flame Dog on this one, but he was like, yeah, that's like, oh man, the thing you need to do is happening right now. So yeah, and then the fourth turn, I draw my hand up. I've got basically another attack, and I've got the arcane on board to get the job done. So yeah, I show it to him, and he's like, you got it, man. So with that, yeah, I did it. Qualified for Nats. We made it into the top 4. And yeah, so I was kind of elated at that point, but also like a little bit exhausted. So then the top 4, I go into a match. It's Kano again. Yeah, I do the normal game plan with the Amethyst Tiara. We had a good back and forth, and then so the game plan was the same. Store some rune chance, come in with a big attack, chunk the Kano down, and then build rune chance back up and send him again. So when I sent the first big chunk of rune chance and Arcanite Ascendancy, opponent decided to go off and try and combo at that time. So, well, he started by doing, I believe it was like an Aether Spindle into an Aether Spindle with the Metacarpus nodes. I think it did hit. I think I pitched a blue and then it hit, and then he was able to opt 4. And he opted the 4 and didn't really like what he saw. And so I think at that point he kind of gave up on comboing me that turn. So he started pitching into the rune chance and then blocked one on the Arcanite Ascendancy. But that actually put me in a good position because he had used the Metacarpus nodes, which is Kano's source of AB1. You still have the Stormstriders, which is AB2. But with the AB1 gone, if I have just any significant amount of rune chants coming in, he would have to pay 2 to prevent each rune chant. So a few turns later, I stacked up some rune chants, sent them, and he did a last-ditch effort with Wildfire and the Stormstriders. I used that Amethyst Tiara, prevented enough of that damage to where the physical from my attack just finished the job. So yeah, we beat the Kano, which was kind of a revenge after the first day. It was a different Kano player. Was my buddy from Chicago. And yeah, so we made it into the finals, and the final match was against Levi, the famous Azalea player. He's a great guy. He's a great member of the Flesh and Blood community, especially if you're an Azalea player. He always responds to people's questions, and I have the most respect for Levi. But this was kind of a dreaded matchup for me all day because Azalea is, in fact, Viserai's worst matchup, period, because he just doesn't deal well with the disruption. And even this deck that doesn't do a lot of different things during the turn can fall prey to the dominate and the disruption like very quickly. So I had even gone through my deck and taken out some of the cards like Warmonger's Diplomacy, which I was playing specifically for the matchup, just because I had basically given up on the matchup. So yeah, we go into the match, and Levi gets to play first. He loads a card, and it's a Spire Sniping, so he's looking for a Dominate and maybe some pumps. But unfortunately for him, he didn't find any. Either there wasn't an arrow to Dominate, or he didn't have the pumps. So he ended up just sending the 3 Dominate to get it out of the arsenal and set up for the next turn. I had 2 options. I could play a Reduce to Runechant, or I could do the Spellbound Creepers and play a Blessing of the Occult to start my turn with 3 Runechants. Because it was so early, I wanted to save the Spellbound Creepers for a later turn, so I ended up just paying into Reduce to Runechant, make 1 Runechant, and go about my day. So I think on my first turn, I was able to make some Runechants, and I had a Sink Below, which it was between a Sink Below and like a Rattlebones or something that I could arsenal. So I arsenaled the Sink Below, drop my hand. It's like there's a Slogism and an Arcanite Ascendancy, and I had no blue in hand to pay for it. So I'm like, dang, I really wish I had a blue. I was like, it's okay. I can play the sync and sync one of my cards to get the blue, pay for Slogism, Arcanite Ascendancy. We're going to be off to the races. But he plays Release the Tension, and then one of the Inertia buffs, and laced with Inertia. And he sends his arrow, and basically my sync below is stuck in Arsenal, and then is also going to get cycled out that turn. Unfortunately, I could not pay for the Slogism and my Arcanite Ascendancy. I basically had to send, I was like, well, I just kind of want to send my Arcanite Ascendancy with the Rune Chants, because Azalea doesn't really like to block your stuff, doesn't really have that much armor. So I was able to deal some damage, get some Rune Chants, and from there, I think that was kind of a notable moment, because if I get the Slogism on the Ascendancy that first turn, then I start the next turn with a large amount of Rune Chants and a lot of damage that I can kind of chain into subsequent attacks. It also takes some pressure off me if Azalea tries to prevent some of the damage or block anything. So I think that was really a pivotal moment that he played the Release the Tension against me there. A few more turns kind of go by, and I'm just trying to block some, set up some Rune Chants. A turn pops up where basically I can play the Slogism that I had drawn into a ninth blade, and I figured I would just go ahead and send the damage. So I sent the Rune Chants. I sent the ninth blade for 15. I honestly can't remember if he took it all because he had the life lead at that point or not, but I was chunking his damage down by about like 10 on a few turns that I did attack. The life totals got pretty close towards the end. On my side, I went from like 9 to 4 and then 2. On his side, it was like 17, 5, and then 2. And unfortunately, in the end, he just got me with the 5 dominate, and I could only block 3, and I was at 2 life. He specifically blocked the previous attack with, I believe it was Tunic, just to make sure that he was at 2 life, and I couldn't block with a Sigil of Suffering to kill him, which was a smart play. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't draw into the reaction, so I could only block for 3 and no armor left. So he just got the job done. He got the win, and it was really a great game. We were just throwing big hits back and forth. Levi's an excellent player. He ended up 8-0 on the event, and this was the first time he got Living Legend points for Azalea, so I was kind of proud to be part of the moment. I was also elated to give him a good match, and Viserai came in second. So yeah, that was my run. So I walked away with the Nationals invite, which was my whole goal for the weekend, and I was really happy with the way the deck kind of performed. Gave me the goods against some opponents when I really needed them, especially that Bolton matchup. I think it was also kind of like a proof of concept for this style of Viserai that is kind of a mid-range style where you can be aggressive with large attacks, or you can play an OTK style. And there's kind of a third mode for this deck, which is the matchup with Illusionist, that I didn't really see. Fortunately, I didn't see Illusionist all weekend, but you play Reaping Blade, and into Dromai, you're basically trying to buff Arcanite Ascendancy into dragons, because each point of physical damage dealt to the dragon produces a rune chant, and you almost never attack Dromai the entire game. You just keep throwing this at dragons, making rune chants, and then you're hoping to get through with the rune chant damage to finish the game. And then against Prism, you sideboard in all the D reacts, and you're just trying to chip away with like a few rune chants and Reaping Blade, like one at a time. And you also are trying most important thing you can do is put up a Looming Doom to chip 2 Arcane each turn and keep them from getting a board of Angels out. So the sideboard is really tight. Most of it is the poppers for Illusionist, which was 3 Runic Rex, 2 Down and Dirty, 1 Cryptic Crossing. I like this just because of the yellow pitch. You can also run like Findle's Fighting Spirit in any of the popper slots if you want to. So yeah, I mean the sideboard, this is all for Illusionist, and so it's like 7 cards, and I didn't see a single Illusionist during the weekend. That's not to say that I was afraid of him. I did have a game plan into it, and I do think you can win that matchup. So I think that like the weekend kind of proved that this deck can compete with pretty much anyone in the meta right now. So you don't have to be afraid. You can play the hero that you love to play. Viserai is that hero for me. And this has kind of been my pet deck for a while. Just recently with Sonata Galaxia, it kind of made the deck viable into the meta. So I think the biggest thing about it is that you can go fetch Runechant generators and still have the go again. Specifically this combo with Runeblood Barrier, it's just so strong. But also the Blessing of the Occult, which people say, hey, this is a bad Read the Runes. It costs 1, doesn't have go again. Of course, Read the Runes doesn't either. But when you can play these cards and then continue to either apply pressure or generate more rune chants on the same turn, it's absolutely huge. So one way to look at it is Sonata Galaxia is like the Revelant Runeblood for a deck that likes to stack rune chants. Because if you play Mordred Tide into Sonata fetching a Runeblood Barrier, this is 1 card that you're playing here with the Galaxia, but you're fetching Runeblood Barrier, which creates 4+1 rune chant and also triggers Viserai to make 1+1 rune chant. So you end up with like 7 rune chants off of 1 card here. Well, with the Mordred Tide. Without the Mordred Tide, this is still a 1 card 5 value play, which it's hard to get that kind of value. The only other card that gives you that value really is Reduced to Rune Chant or your Arknight Ascendancy. So this deck is trying to abuse these cards right here. They're the most important cards you can play. And that's kind of how we keep the value. It's kind of how we keep pace with cards like Cast Bones or Codex or Bonds of Ancestry. Is we have to find ways to sneak in that extra value. And we have those tools. Yeah, we have those tools. So overall, yeah, it's a flexible deck with a game plan into all the different heroes. Something that's hard to do, something that's been hard to do ever since Bloodshieath Skeleton was banned. At that time, you could play aggressively into the aggressive decks and race them, or you could play an OTK plan against Guardian using the Skeleton. And Sonata Galaxia kind of allows you to do both as well. So I'm not sure if people are loving or hating this card right now, but I absolutely think it's slept on. And a shout out to Breezy for spoiling this card and doing a great job with a spoiler video. Okay, so that's all I have. That's all I want to say today, really, is that, hey, if you want to play the hero you love, you can totally do it. If you're more interested in this deck and seeing what it can do, I've been playing it a lot and posting videos to my channel here. So you can see kind of what are the optimal play lines, how you play into different decks, different heroes. Yeah, see for yourself what it can do. I'd encourage anyone to take it to your armories, take it to your RTNs, because we got 2 more weekends, I believe, where you can play this deck. And then who knows, maybe it'll show up at Pro Tour. Maybe I'll take it to Nats. We'll see. We'll see how the meta develops. But I appreciate you guys watching. like and subscribe. And stay tuned. I'll try and bring you guys some more gameplay videos. And if you have any questions, just look me up on the Purple Discord or leave comments on my video here. And I try to answer any questions that I get, basically because I'm just passionate about Viserai and the deck. So thanks, guys. Catch you again. Appreciate you tuning in. Peace.